Mesdames et Messieurs, ladies and gentlemen, it is a privilege and an honor to introduce our French Minister of Economy and Industry and a dear friend, Bruno Le Maire. Since President Macron has been elected, many reforms have taken place and we are starting to reap the fruits. Numbers speak loud, and I will take only one example. A lot of accomplishments have been done in the labor and economic reform, which led to reduce unemployment to 8.5%, which is, in all fairness, still high, but coming from circa 10%, it is quite an achievement. Bruno Le Maire is coming from another party, Les Républicains, the center-right party, and believe that the best way to serve our country and help reforms, he had to join Emmanuel Macron, and since he has worked hard to change our culture, our habits, and bring the agenda of reforms forward so strongly that we can say France is back. Reforms are not easy in any given country, and even more in ours. It suffices to see what happened Saturday with the yellow vest, and you can expect more to come. There is not a dull moment in France, as the government has on its agenda the retirement pension reform. We still have a long way to go before we get to final destination on reforms. Our deficit and debt are too high, despite the fact that we still have the highest tax burden of OECD. But Bruno is determined to modernize our country, as he has authored the Pact Law, which will give the corporation the option to define a raison d'être, which should include all stakeholders, a path to more humanistic capitalism. Bruno Le Maire is a true European, committed to Franco-German strong partnership, and a builder. He is pushing for what we call the Airbus of batteries, or a European AI approach, as well as building European unicorns. I could go on the dreams and achievements of Bruno Le Maire, but I will close in reminding everyone that not only he is a great minister, but he is also an acclaimed writer. His last book, which is a testimony to a friend died by brain cancer, has been a bestseller. He dared to say in an interview to the French business papers, Les Echos, not crying is giving up one's humanity. But make no mistake, he is not crying. His ambition for the country's reform and industrial upheaval are huge and make him obsessed about the success of France. Mesdames et Messieurs, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our Minister of Economy and Industry, Monsieur Bruno Le Maire.
Thank you, dear Maurice, for your kind words. Thank you for your friendship. Dear Alan Murray, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, thank you for inviting me for closing your meeting. And I just want to tell you, as a starting point, that it is a great pleasure to attend this global forum today. You know that Fortune is an iconic magazine for many French people, especially for French CEOs and entrepreneurs, and I can see many of them in the room today. You invited me to talk about how the French economy is now back. And I just want to maybe have a look at what we have achieved briefly over the last 2.5 years under the leadership of President Emmanuel Macron. When Emmanuel Macron was elected in 2017, France was seen as a country with first-class infrastructures, excellent universities and engineers, world-leading companies, but also as a country lagging behind in terms of structural reforms, a country not making the most of its potential. I think French people shared this point of view. And if many French people have decided to vote for Emmanuel Macron as president in May 2017, this is because they wanted France to become a modern country in the 21st century. And this is exactly what we have done over the last 2 years and what we will continue to do over the last 2 years by the end of the mandate of Emmanuel Macron. We have implemented strong reforms that had been postponed for too long and that will make France successful. We have reformed our labor markets and we have simplified our labor market. We have replaced a very complex tax system with a 30% flat tax for all capital revenues. We have decreased our corporate tax rate, which will fall down from 33% to 25% over Emmanuel Macron's mandate. We have voted measures to boost our SMEs' growth thanks to the so-called Law Pact. We have made entrepreneurship easier and we have removed legal constraints to help SMEs grow. We have set up also an ambitious innovation policy, and this is for me the milestone and the key point of our policy. We have created a 10 billion euro fund financing disruptive technologies such as AI, quantum computing, or renewable energy storage. This fund was created thanks to the privatization of non-strategic public companies such as La Française des Jeux, which is, as you know, a great success for a privatization. These measures are giving some very concrete results right now. Despite global economic uncertainties, French growth is strong and higher than the average Eurozone growth rate. The unemployment rate has reached its lowest since the financial crisis in 2008, and 500,000 jobs were created. Jobs were created even in the industrial sector, with 42 industrial sites opened since 2017. France remains the most attractive destination for R&D projects. Startups raised 3.6 billion euros in 2018. And many companies, as you know, have decided to invest or to settle in France. 2018 was the best year ever recorded in terms of foreign investment. More than 1,500 investment decisions were taken. Thanks to those very good results, France is now seen as a leader in Europe. And this is, of course, a key point for all of us because we are all aware that the success of France is also dependent on the decisions that we will have to take in Europe. We have all it takes to become a leader in innovation in Europe. Many tech companies have already invested in AI research centers in France, for instance, Facebook and Google. And we are leading policies to develop deep tech companies, to train AI researchers and developers, and to invest in the next generation of disruptive technologies. Paris, following the Brexit, will become the first financial center in Europe. We host different financial regulators. The European Banking Authority has moved from London to Paris, and many banks, insurers, or investment funds have relocated a part of their employees in France. I am, of course, thinking of Bank of America, which inaugurated their new headquarters in France Wednesday. More than 400 employees will now work in Paris. We expect in total, by the end of the mandate of Emmanuel Macron, around 4,500 financial sector workers to relocate to Paris following the Brexit. On environmental issue, finally, France is paving the way. And I just want to insist on the necessity of having concrete results on the fight against climate change. Our line is simple. Every public policy must be green right now. We want to be coherent between the efforts we ask our population to do and what we do abroad. This is why we decided to stop investing in coal power plants in France and abroad. The European Investment Bank took a historical decision this week and committed to stopping the financing of fossil fuel energy projects by the end of 2021. France has been advocating for transforming it in a true European climate bank. This is the first step. Finance in itself must be green too. Younger generations do not want to save their money on financial products that are not green. We are working at the European level to set up rules identifying which investments are green and which are not, and prevents greenwashing. A French economic and political rebirth happened because we have made clear political choices. The choice of competitiveness, the choice of innovation, the choice of an ambitious environmental policy. And I want to make very clear that these choices will not change until the end of Emmanuel Macron's mandate. I won't be longer because I think it's better to listen to your questions and to answer to Alain's questions. But you have understood my message is clear. France is back. The French economy is back. We have concrete results and we will build on those results to make France great again. Thank you.
Why don't you sit on this side? Thank you. Thank you for those comments, and thank you for hosting us in your beautiful city. We appreciate it. We like your ballroom as well. So it was not our intention to schedule this conference on the anniversary of the Yellow Vests, but here we are. And I'm just wondering if the Yellow Vest movement has slowed the pace of reform in any way.
I would not say that they have slowed the pace of reforms, but I really think that the message conveyed by the Yellow Jackets movement is not only a message for France, but it is also a message for all developed countries, for all Western countries, either in Europe or in the United States. People are just waiting for having good incomes and for having the possibilities of having a good life thanks to their jobs. And if the capitalism as an economic model is not able to provide such a guarantee to the people, we all run the risk of having huge difficulties.
But elaborate on that a little bit. President Macron has talked about a crisis of capitalism. You were sitting in front of a group of capitalists. What's the problem?
I think that the key problem is the way people are living when they have jobs. If you cannot give the guarantee that thanks to your jobs, you will have a good life, you will have the possibility to go to the restaurant with your family, to go to a vacation with your family, then you run the risk of jeopardizing the whole model. That's the first issue. And I think that Emmanuel Macron is right to underline the fact that we need to build a new capitalism which would be fairer and which would give more results for all the people and not only for one part of the people.
But what does that mean? What do the people in this room need to do differently from what they've been doing?
I think it's up, first of all, to the government to ensure that the people with the lowest wages have the possibility to live, thanks to their wages, a life that would be a decent life. The second issue with capitalism is the necessity of having a sustainable development, a sustainable economy, and all the decisions that we have been taken, for instance, for green finance, for having a sustainable development, are for the single purpose of having a sustainable development and a sustainable capitalism. And we are all on the same boat, the CEOs of great companies and the governments. We all need to make our best to have a sustainable development and to ensure that we are taking the right decisions to fight the climate change.
This gets back to my original question, though. I wonder if you're saying that we have a crisis of capitalism, we need sustainable capitalism, businesses need to do better on wages. Does that conflict at all with your message to business to come to France?
No, because when I'm listening to the CEOs, the American CEOs, they are explaining exactly the same. I think that all the biggest CEOs in the United States are aware of the necessity of changing the rules of capitalism. And what will make France more attractive is not only the fact that we are successful by having a strong level of growth, by reducing the level of unemployment, but we are also paving the way for a new capitalism, which would be fairer and more sustainable. This also makes France more attractive. Which is the country in Europe which is also today the most attractive country for all investors? This is France. Which is a country which is paving the way for new ideas, for a new economic model? This is France. And this is also what makes France so attractive today.
Now, one of those American CEOs, Elon Musk, made a high-profile decision on Friday to not come to France, but to go to Germany instead. What do you think happened there?
Germany remains good in cars, I would say. Indeed. But, you know, I'm not complaining about that decision, because when you have growth in Germany, it means that it will have a positive impact in France. And you know that we are building something totally new with Germany and with my friend Peter Altmaier on the automotive industry by creating a new industry, which will be the industry of electric batteries for the automotive industry. And the fact that Tesla has decided to open a new factory in Germany is also very good news for this new industry, the French-German industry for electric batteries.
You know, when President Macron had your job and traveled to see, is Gary Shapiro here? He was here earlier. He invited Minister Macron to come to the CES conference in Las Vegas and asked me to interview him. And I remember at the time he said something that was sounded kind of shocking coming from the mouth of a French minister. He said, "We need to make it easier for companies to fail in France." Have you made it easier for companies to fail in France?
We have done it, thanks PACT, because you know, if you are not giving the guarantee to companies that if they fail, they will have the possibility to move on and to have new possibilities, new investments, a new way forward, then you will never have entrepreneur. I want people to have the possibility to fail and then to have new ideas, new investments, and to be back. Yeah. That's exactly what we have done with the law PACT, Plan d'Action pour la croissance et la transformation des entreprises.
I want to open it up to questions in just a minute, so please be prepared. But before I do that, can you talk about what's happening in technology? Do you think the big technology companies have too much power in France?
I think that's the key for all of us, not only for France, but also for all European countries. We need to put a lot of money on new technologies. And when Emmanuel Macron is explaining that the 3% rule for public finances is not the key for the future, he's right. He's a little bit provocative, but he's right. The key question for Europe is whether we will be able to be sovereign and to have our own technologies as far as artificial intelligence is concerned or the storage of renewable energies. Either we are dependent on China or the United States, and we will never be a great economic power for the 21st century. Or we are able to put a lot of money on the table, thanks to the Fund for Disruptive Innovation, for instance, and then we will keep the European sovereignty. I want my own artificial intelligence. I want my own technologies for the storage of renewable energies. I want my own technologies for the questions of health. That's the key. We do not want to have the same experience as the one we have on digital companies. We have failed in building big digital companies in Europe. We want to be successful for artificial intelligence.
Any questions? Yes, right here. Go ahead.
Hi, David Mayer, Fortune. France has tried to build a French cloud before, and it didn't work out. Now France is saying that it will work with Germany on approaching this digital sovereignty issue by creating a European cloud. How will you ensure that you have the demand from companies for a European cloud that did not materialize before?
That's a critical question. Just a first remark. There won't be any political sovereignty if you are giving all your data to foreign nations. Even if those nations are the United States, which means a close ally to Europe. You need to keep your own data. Because thanks to the data, you will be able to feed artificial intelligence and to make artificial intelligence successful. That's why we need a sovereign cloud for France, for Germany, and for Europe. Let's be very specific and very blunt. It won't be possible for France, for Germany, or for any other European countries to have the same level of development as Microsoft or other key digital giants. Which means that we have to focus these clouds, these sovereign cloud, French and German, only on very sensitive data. Otherwise, we will fail. If we are explaining to all the biggest companies in Europe, well, you have to give your data to a sovereign cloud which will be built by the French and the German government, we will fail. Let's be clear. But if we are explaining, well, you have some data which are the most sensitive one, and you do not want those sensitive data to be given either to China or to the United States or to any other nation, and we are provided you solutions, technical solutions, to have a very good protection of your most sensitive data, in that case, and only in that case, I think that we can be successful.
We had an interesting back and forth in here earlier this afternoon between the U.S. ambassador to NATO and a representative from Huawei. I wonder if you could give us the European perspective on that. Are you worried about Huawei's dominance?
Do you have any other question? No, on Huawei and sensitive data. You know that we do not want to exclude any foreign company from the French or from the European market ab initio, I would say. But everybody must be aware of the necessity of protecting some key data. And that's exactly what Emmanuel Macron explained to President Xi when we were together in China last week. We are not excluding Huawei from the French or from the European market. But we are explaining to Huawei and to any other digital company, we have sensitive data, we have sensitive informations, and we want to be able to take the decisions to protect those data and to protect those informations. That's the line, the political line that has been defined by the French government, and I think that this is such a line that can be accepted by everybody.
Other questions? Yes, right here up front. Introduce yourself so Minister Le Maire knows who's asking.
Yeah, sure. Maria Capello, I sit on a number of boards of listed companies in Italy. So the question is, you used a sentence saying, make France great again, and I'm pretty sure you use it for a purpose. So I was wondering if you can tell us a bit what similarities you see with the United States. And after that, your very well articulated strategy, how does it fit to Europe? And what kind of challenges you see France can actually help Europe to solve?
Well, on the first question, I think that we have all to be aware that even if the United States remain our closest allies, everybody is aware that the American government and the American administration is having its own policy, not taking into account anymore the European interest or the French interest. That's it. I'm just looking at the reality as it stands, which means that we have to take the right decisions to be able to face the challenges of the 21st century alone. When I'm saying alone, I'm not speaking about France, I'm speaking about France. But we have to face the challenge of security alone. We have to face the challenge of new technologies alone. We have to face the challenge of climate change alone, because we cannot rely anymore on the support of the United States. That's a fact. The United States have decided to withdraw from the Paris Agreement. If we want to be able to take the right decisions on green finance, on the fight against climate change, on new technologies for the storage of renewable energies, we have to count on our own energy and our own decisions, not on the support of the United States. That's it. Which means, to respond to your second question, that we want to be stronger at the national level to help building a stronger Europe. That's the core of the policy that we are supporting with Emmanuel Macron. We are not doing that only for France and only for the French people. We are doing that for the sake of having a stronger Europe for the 21st century, on security, on economy, and also on the social challenges.
Minister, let me just ask you before we go on a stronger Europe for the 21st century, what is the state of Europe? Are you confident that Europe will hold together in order to achieve the things you're talking about?
If I'm looking at the present situation, I'm worried about the situation of Europe. Because everywhere you can see the weakening of European governments. Everywhere you can see the difficulty for European governments to move on, to have a majority, to take decisions. And the lack of decisions feeds populism everywhere in Europe. The root, which is the key explanation for the rise of populism everywhere in Europe, is the lack of leadership and the lack of decisions. But if I'm thinking of the future of Europe, I think that we have everything to be successful. We have a big market, we have technologies, we have strong nations. The key point is to be able to gather the forces of European countries, European nations, European people, European skills to make Europe a strong continent. Let's take an example on artificial intelligence. No country at the European level will be able to face the challenge of artificial intelligence alone. If we are able to put all our data together, if we are able to put our research together, then we will be able to face the challenge and we will be able to face the race of data and to meet the challenge. That's the key point on every topic.
Minister Le Maire, thank you again for hosting us, and thank you for...
Thank you, and have a good evening in Paris. Thank you.